Hi everyone! Thank you so much for joining me today. I can see so many of you are already using that live chat feature, and there's so many of you, so it's so lovely to see you all. My name is Becky, and we're going to be going through this lovely poppy brush party painting, which is obviously in support of the Poppy Appeal going on this year. So it's a slightly different way of raising money this year. Obviously, due to COVID and other things, normal fundraising things can't go ahead. So I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you for joining me today. And, you know, all those who've donated already, it's fantastic. So before we get started, oh gosh, yeah, Kate, definitely send a picture. So I was going to say, definitely take lots of pictures today. That's another way to show you all of your support and everything. And it would be great if you could pop them on social media. You can display them in your windows at home, all those sorts of things to show your support for the appeal. So you can still donate. There's still time to donate. You can, I think it's in the link in the bio, and I think Brush Party might publish it on the live chat link as well. So today we're going to be painting with acrylic paints, but obviously you don't have to use acrylics. So this one is quite a nice picture that you can use any kind of medium. So if you want to use pencils, felt tips, watercolors, if you're an oil painter, why not try some oils, or literally anything you have at home. So I'm going to go through it because I'm using acrylics, but I will explain everything fairly clearly, hopefully. We'll see how we get on, so that you can use whatever you have at home. It's a really lovely, relaxing painting to do for a nice Sunday afternoon, so don't worry. So the colours we're going to be using, if you're using acrylic paints or anything like that, we're going to be using all of these colours. So we've got, hi Krista. So we've got white, blue, yellow, red and black. Now, obviously, you can add a bit of green as well. I'm not going to, just because I'm going to stick with the primary colours just to make it a bit more accessible for everybody. But if you've got a green, feel free to pop a green on there as well. So you can also change the colour scheme as much as you like. So there's no right or wrong with this. There's so many different colours you could do for the background. You can even add a background to this if you wanted to. There's so much you can do with this. So those are all the colours. I can go back through that again before we get started. And brushes wise, we're actually just going to be using our normal Brush Party brushes. So if you don't have these ones exactly, don't panic, because you can just use a large brush and a small brush. You can just use a large brush, actually, to be honest, but these are the ones I'm going to be using. So I've got a large chisel brush, I've got a slightly smaller chisel brush, and I've also got a rounded number 6 brush as well. But yes, you just want a slightly larger brush for the background, and then something a little bit smaller if you have one, just to get some smaller details in. So like the leaves and stuff might be easier with a smaller brush. So yeah, the last couple of things we'll need if you're using paintings, if you're using paints for a painting, you'll just need some water and a bit of tissue paper or something as well, just to clean up your brushes. But yeah, obviously if you're using paints, pens and pencils, then you won't need any of that stuff. So in terms of YouTube then, this is going to be streaming for about an hour-ish. We'll see how we get on. But if you have a look on the right-hand side of your screen, if you're signed into YouTube, you'll see the live chat feature. So if you see my eyes just looking this way, it's because I'm reading all the lovely comments that you guys are writing. So yeah, you need to be signed into a YouTube account. So if you've got a Google account, which is like a Gmail one, it should automatically log you in. So you can comment in that. It's a really good way to stay in contact with me and chat to each other as well. You can give each other tips. Like there's a few new people, some people that have not done a brush party before, so feel free to share any tips and yeah, any comments on that live chat feature. But yes, so feel free to donate as much as you like throughout the event, and definitely take lots and lots of photos. I've seen that someone has said Samantha's doing a time lapse. That's a really good idea. Oh, hi Claire, hi as well. So yeah, right, we're going to get started. Please do take loads of pictures. I know I keep saying it, but it's going to be so fantastic to see them all at the end. So if you're using paints, we are going to be grabbing a large brush for our background. Now, if you're using acrylic paints, you want to make sure you're using quite a lot of water. Oh no, so Esther, you might just need to refresh. It might be maybe that it's not quite loaded. So yeah, if you've got any problems or anything, just pop your comment in there and we'll be around to help you out. Right, so I'm dipping my brush in the water, and for the background, I'm going to keep it quite light because we really want that red and the poppy to stand out as much as we can. So I'm going to use quite a lot of white with this. So I'm going to grab a bit of white. I'm going to separate it a little bit. So I've got a space on my palette for some mixing. So I'm just separating the white a little bit, mixing that water in, getting it nice and runny. And I'm going to make a nice pastel kind of minty green colour. So I'm going to grab some yellow and blue and mix it into that white that I've popped on a new part of the palette. So obviously if you want to use the green, feel free to add a bit of green in there as well. But obviously yellow and blue make green anyway. So you'll just get a slightly different green. So everyone's is going to be a little bit different. So there's no right or wrong with this. So I'm making a nice minty green. I'm mixing quite a lot of it because I've got quite a lot of canvas to fill. So loads and loads of paint on there. Lots of water, lots of paint, and I'm going to pick up all of that on my brush, and we're just going to go all different directions with the brush. So I'm using the brush flat ways. So I just bring my canvas a bit closer so you can see what we've got so far. I'm just going to pull it this way, that way, literally all different directions, starting in the middle, because this bit is going to be the lightest part of our canvas. So it's a nice glow around our lovely poppy. So I'm using that flat edge, I'm pushing it around. I'm doing quite smallish brush strokes. But it doesn't really matter. We want to kind of make it a little bit messy so it's got a bit of texture to it. And we're just filling that whole middle part of the canvas. Now, if you're working on a slightly bigger canvas, it might take you a little bit longer. So with the YouTube stream, you can pause it as well. So there's no rush to do this all today. You can paint it all afternoon if you want to. So if you work on a big canvas, do take your time. And just enjoy the process. I don't want anyone to stress or anything at all. I'm very, very excited to see these ones. It's a really nice one to paint. So I'm just picking up a little bit more paint on my brush, and as we're sort of moving towards the edges of the canvas, I'm going to be using a little bit more blue just to make it a little bit darker. So I don't want to go too dark, so I'm not mixing loads and loads of blue in. I'm just picking a little bit of blue, mixing it around so it's just going a slightly darker colour. And I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow in. So it's just a bit less white. So if you're using pens or pencils or felt tips, I'd maybe just keep going, but using a bit more of the darker colours. So a bit more of the blue in there as well. And things. So yeah, let me know what you're working with. I'd love to know what we've got going on. So yeah, I'm going to keep going with all my messy brush strokes like this around what we've just done. So we're just making the outside part of that. It's kind of like an oval shape in the middle, making it just a little bit darker. Still doing the same brush strokes. We don't want it to be like a sharp line between the middle bit and the outside bit. It all should be nice and blurry and messy. So just keep going. It might be worth just having a hairdryer nearby if you're working with acrylics, just so that it's not going to take too long to dry. So that's always quite a handy thing to do. You could also try like watercolours as well, actually. This would look really lovely as a watercolour piece. So just don't forget to keep taking those pictures. So I'm just going to keep adding a little bit more blue and a bit more yellow and a bit less white every time. Oh, we have got someone using watercolour already. Fantastic. That's going to look so nice. Can't wait to see that one. And I'm looking forward to seeing that time lapse as well. Okay, so yeah, can you see it's got a little bit darker for the edges? I think the original one's got a bit more blue in there, so I'm going to just add a bit more blue, a little bit less yellow, just to get a nice variety of colours. So you don't want it to just be all one colour. Just experiment a little bit. I mean, it's just the background. And if you're using acrylic paints, it's really forgiving. So there's no right or wrong, actually, with paints, because no matter how much you put on there, you can always just paint over it again. So if something goes a slightly different colour to what you're expecting, just let it dry and paint over it again, or you can just blend it out and just see what happens. Because sometimes you just make a really lovely colour by accident, so just have a little go and experiment with all different ones. So if you've got any like metallic paint, that might look quite nice as well. I mean, feel free to get really creative with this. You can add like a nice pattern in the poppy, you can do it in the background or whatever you feel like doing. I'm just going to go all the way to the edges now with a slightly darker colour. How's everyone getting on so far? We all good? Let me know if you've got any problems or you've got any questions at all. You use that live sheet feature as much as you like. But I'm hoping we're all good. So if you are taking pictures, I would do them after each step so that you can kind of see it progress throughout the event. So yeah, fantastic. So just keep going. I'm just going to add a little bit more blue so I get a slightly more of a cooler green, just to mix it up a little bit because it's quite nice to have all different kind of colours. I'm going all the way to the corners and to the edges now, so we should be filling quite a lot of the canvas now. So what you don't want to do is go too dark too quickly. So if you found that it's gone really dark, quite close to the middle, what we can do is add a bit of a lighter colour back into the middle at the end. Or at the end of the background, not at the end of the painting, obviously. So I'm just going to maybe add a little bit of a lighter colour towards the middle, just to make sure I get a really nice varied background. So yeah, I've got lots and lots of paint on the brush all the time. There we go. Oh, okay, so if the paint's too dark, don't panic. You can always add, if you're using the watercolour, just add a bit of water to it and maybe tap it with the tissue. So if it's coming out quite thick as well, that's a really good way to lighten up a bit of watercolour. And that tissue is just, yeah, really, really handy. So definitely try and get it before it's too dark. Okay, so if you've got white speckles on the canvas, I've got quite a few down here. It just means that the paint might not be thick enough. So what I would do, Barbara, is just grab a little bit more water on the brush and go straight in to your paint and mix up loads and loads of paint on that brush. So straight from the water into the paint, and I'll show you how thick that paint is on my brush. Like this, it's so thick, and it's actually not fully mixed on the brush, and it means that when it goes on, you're going to get all kind of different colours showing through, like a nice marbly effect. It just adds a really nice variation to that background. And if you maybe just do slightly smaller brush strokes, it will just really help to fill. And it just, yeah, so if anyone's having any of those problems, just take a little step back, see if there's any white dots showing, and maybe just paint over a couple of bits again. Just keep going. So like I said before, I'm just going to make that middle a little bit lighter. So if you're feeling that if the background's a bit too dark, just rinse off your brush slightly. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix a whole lot of white back into my colour. So Krista, you can send a photo through the Brush Party Messenger page, so on Facebook. I will get that straight to my phone and I can have a look at your painting. So if you want me to check up on anything that you're doing so far, just send it through the Brush Party Facebook page, or you can also email it to us as well, and that would be good. Oh, fantastic. That would be amazing with crayons. And I hope you're enjoying it. Crayons are so fun to paint with. Well, draw with. Paint, draw? Yeah, draw with. Can't wait to see your pictures as well. So yeah, I'm going to add loads and loads of white back into my colour. So if you're using the crayons, maybe just pick up a bit of white, a little white crayon. Oh yeah, okay, so we've got a nice hashtag going on. Paint poppy, that'd be good. Yeah, so feel free to copy and paste that hashtag when you're posting up your pictures. So yeah, if you've got Instagram or anything, you can always use that to put it on your stories as well, because we can see that and we can share them as well with all of our followers. So I'm just going to go back over this middle section, which is a slightly lighter green, just to make it really, really pop and add a nice glow around that poppy. And the best way to blend it after you've done this a little bit lighter is just to take off all of the paint. So I'm going to give it a really good rinse off in the water, tap it on the tissue, so I've not got any paint or any water on the brush at all. I've just got a nice dry brush. And what I'm going to do is do my nice messy brush strokes, but kind of going in between the two colours. So I'm going to be going in between the dark colour and into the light one. And if you're using acrylics, it's a really good way to just blend it out, and it makes it nice and smooth again. And it's definitely going to make sure that our poppy is going to stand out really nicely. And if you're using crayons, you can always go back through the other colours just to kind of smooth it out a little bit as well. I hope you're getting on okay with that watercolour. If you've got any questions still, let me know. So a good way to dry our canvases before we go on to the next little step is just to grab our edges like this and give it a good waft. So, oh good, fantastic. So yeah, give it a really good waft, or this is where you can grab your hairdryer. If you're feeling a little bit like it's a Sunday afternoon, don't want to do that much effort, just grab your hairdryer. It dries it instantly and it will save you a little bit of time. But the next bit we're going to do is actually just go straight in with the poppy. So we're going to start with this little dot right in the centre. So it's a nice oval shape. Oh yeah, Sammy. So yeah, this video will be available. I think it'll be available for 24 hours. Brush Party, correct me if I'm wrong. So you can re-watch the whole video as many times as you need to. But if you do need it longer, I'm sure we can leave it up for however long you need. So just keep wafting it, making sure it's nice and dry. And then we'll start with that middle of the poppy. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Yeah, until we've done the next little bit. So give it a good waft. So how's everyone getting on? Has everyone got a nice background so far? Definitely take a little picture. Oh yeah, Kate, thank you for reminding me. So I actually haven't done my edges just yet. I don't know why. I'm going to probably do my edges now while I'm letting it dry. So if you're using a canvas and it's got edges, then I would definitely paint your edges. So what a good way to do that is just to grab loads of the paint that you were just using, maybe the darker colour, or you can actually do any colour you like because it's like a border around your painting. So I'm actually going to mix up a nice bright green by mixing that blue and yellow together. Also just gives the front of the canvas a bit more time to dry, doesn't it? So with the brush, I've got loads of paint on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the back of the canvas, so this edge here, and I'm going to pull the brush forward just to make sure that I'm not going to get any paint on the front because we spent a little bit of time on that. We don't want to have to try and paint over it again. So I'm just going to do it really lightly, really neatly, as neat as you can. Just go all down the sides. It does make a really big difference. Hopefully these are all going to go up on your wall or on the window. And what you don't want is these white outlines showing through, the white edges. Just make sure you could do it in like a nice blue colour or you could do it yellow, literally any colour you like. It just adds a nice little frame to your painting. Okay. So once you've done all your edges and you're happy with what you've got so far, then we can rinse off our brushes and we can get started on the next little spot. So now I was saying, just be really careful with the paint. I've just ended up painting the front of my canvas, so you just have to be super careful because if you're using a different colour, it's going to be a little bit harder to blend it in. Luckily, I'm using green, so I can quite easily blend it. Oh, okay, nice, that's good. That's all good. So yeah, with watercolour, you definitely don't want too much paint on the background. So if it's quite thick at the second, it might be worth doing another little layer of water and just tapping it off, just to make sure that the red is definitely going to stand out. But maybe just give it a little tap to make sure it's all good. That really helps to see how thick the paint is and things. Just blend that in. Last edge. Looks much, much better, doesn't it, with those edges done? Thanks, Kate. Keeping me on track here. Okay, so mine's pretty much dry now. Best way to test it, like I said, is just to tap your canvas or your paper, whatever you're using, just to make sure it's definitely kind of dry. Might be worth grabbing some wet wipes or something, just in case you're a little bit messy like I am. But acrylic paint does come off your hands nice and easy, just a bit of soapy water and it's fine. Clothing, if it gets on your clothes, might just try and wash it off as quickly as you can before it dries. Just a little warning there for you. But yes, right. Are we ready for the next little step? If you are ready, give me a little thumbs up and I will start with the next little bit. So we're pretty much going to be using, well, we're going to start with a little bit of black just to get the centre part of the poppy. So make sure you've got a little bit of black on your palette ready. And then we're going to do a nice bright red section for the petals. So we're going to start with this big one here, this main one. And we're just going to take it petal by petal, so do it nice and slowly so that we're all okay. And then we'll move around the poppy like this all the way through to get the nice green on. Then we're going to add some highlights to it, and then we're going to paint over it again with a bit of red. And that's the best way to get these lovely lighter bits and dark bits, and then we're going to add some shadows as well. So it sounds like there's a lot to do, but it's not too bad. So for this next bit, I'd maybe move on to a slightly smaller brush if you've got one. If you've not got a smaller brush, don't panic. You can just carry on with your bigger brush. It's absolutely fine. So I'm giving my brush a good rinse off. Fantastic, Linda's ready. Give it a good rinse off. Dry it on your tissue as well, just to make sure it doesn't get too hard with the paint. Because if the bristles get dry with the paint on them, they get a little bit harder to clean. So definitely dry them once you've rinse in the water. to make sure there's no paint left on them. So I'm using my cropped 3/8 brush, this one here. So if you've got the brush party set, it's the one with the light wooden handle and it's got 3/8 written on it. So this one's probably one of my favourite brushes. It's really good to get all those lovely little details in. So we're just going to start with a very basic shape for the petal, and then we're going to go in and add these little wavy lines. Oh no, I can't believe the weather today. It's been pouring it down, isn't it? That's the thing with conservatories, that they are quite loud. I could talk a bit louder though, can't I? So we're going to start with the black first. So grab your smaller brush, tap it on your tissue so you've not got too much water this time. And I'm just picking up a really small amount of black on the brush like this. So I'm not putting my brush completely in the black, I'm just getting a little bit, pulling it to one side, mixing it onto the brush. Okay, so this dot is going to be just a tiny little bit above halfway. So if you find your halfway point and dead center, so about here, we're going to go up about 1/2 inch from this point. So I'm going to go roughly around here. So it's just a little bit higher. And we're just going to start with a very small dot about there. Tiny, tiny dot, just to make sure if it's not quite in the right place and you feel like you want to change it, then you can move it. It's a bit easier to get rid of a little dot than it is to get rid of a whole brush mark. So once you're happy with your placement, so if you want to move it around a little bit, I might move mine slightly over to the right. So I'm doing another little dot just to make sure I'm definitely happy. What we're going to do is we're going to turn our brush so it's on a slight diagonal. So I've got one side of the brush pointing down to the bottom left corner and 1/2 of the brush pointing up to the top right. And all I'm going to do is a couple of little dabs to get a nice textured black oval shape. So I'm very lightly just tapping on, and I would probably make this quite small to start with because we can always add a bit more later on. So I'm making it roughly, I'm working on quite a small canvas actually. So mine, I'm working on a 16 by 12 inch canvas, so it's quite small. So mine is roughly about the width of 2 closed fingers together. So if you're working on a bigger canvas or paper, oh look at that, maybe make sure your canvas is dry before you go to pick it up. So yeah, if you're working on a slightly bigger one, maybe just do a couple more fingers to get the width. So it's a slight diagonal and it's kind of like an oval shape or like a very squished lemon, something a little bit like that. That's what we're going for. And we are going to add to it later on. So it's just a rough shape just so we can get that center of the poppy on there. And I'm definitely going to rinse off the brush a little bit to get all of the black paint out. Yeah, a rugby ball. That's probably the better way of, a better image. Thank you. So I'm rinsing the brush, getting all of the black out, and we're going to switch to the neat red. So for this, I'm going to add a little bit of water to the brush, and I'm going to pick up quite a bit of red on the paintbrush. So I'm just making the paint a little bit more fluid so that it's not too sticky. And that's going to be the best way to get nice crisp lines on our canvas. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of make like a triangle shape. So the smaller bit is where it joins into the center of our poppy, and it's going to get bigger as it gets towards the sides. So we'll start with a straight line first, then we'll do a triangle around it, just so we can get the right shape and size. So the first thing I'm going to do is if you've got a brush like mine and you've got long bristles on one side and shorter bristles on the other, we'll need to have the longer bristles pointing to the center of our poppy, like this way here. And what I'm going to do is pull this brush up on its way up to the top left corner, but I'm going to stop just somewhere around here, so it's not too close to the top, because we need to get our other leaf in that's going to be pointing up to 11 o'clock to make it a nice remembrance poppy. So I'm going to leave about 1/4 of the way from the top free and about 1/4 of the way in from the left hand side as well. So roughly in this top left corner, about 1/4 of the way in. So it might be worth just popping your finger on the canvas or your paper just to make sure you've kind of got a bit of a guide. And long bristles pointing to the dot, and I'm going to pull the brush up like this, up to join to where my finger is. So that's like the center line of the triangle that we're going to be doing in a second. And once we've got that in there, we can then do our triangle shape. So same technique again. If you've got the same brush as me, long bristles pointing down. If you've not got the same brush as me, maybe you've got one like this, you don't have to worry about which way around you hold it, as long as you're just doing it nice and smooth, it'll be absolutely fine. So long bristles pointing towards that dot. I'm going to start from the same point as before, but I'm going to go up a little more vertically this time. So this time it's going to go up towards the middle at the top. And rather than doing a really sharp triangle, I'm going to slightly round off the edges. So I'm going to pull the brush round like this. So it's a kind of half a triangle in there. Well, it is a triangle, but we're going to do another half on this side. And then we're going to go down the other way and then join it back in. So yeah, don't worry if you're falling a bit behind. I've just got somebody's message. Please do pause the video as much as you want to. There's no rush at all. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so feel free to pause it as much as you need to. There's no rush at all. So I'm just going to make it quite even on both sides. So I've got a very good base for that popping. And then before it dries too much, I'm just going to fill it in. And I'm going to use that flat edge of the brush, just so I've got a nice even coverage on that first petal. There we go. This is very exciting. And then we're going to just repeat the same kind of process. So each petal is going to be a slightly different size and slightly different shape. So all of our triangles are going to be a little bit different. So this one, going down to, say, like 7 o'clock, this one here, it's going to be slightly wider. And it's going to overlap slightly with the first one we've done. So I'm going to start with the straight line going down towards the bottom left corner, but I'm going to stop roughly about 1/3 of the way up the canvas. So if you want to find 1/3 of the way up first, it's probably the easiest way to do it. So I would say 1/3 is about here. Just pop your hand on the way down to the bottom left corner, about 1/3 of the way up. I'm going to do my line going from the poppy's centre all the way down to my finger, and I'm going to make this triangle a little bit wider. So I'm going to pull the left side a bit more horizontally, so it starts quite straight, and then I'm going to round off the edge and make it quite a flat, long shape. And I'm going to do the same thing going the other way, so going up to the right and then curve it in. So we're going to add these extra flicky bits on the side, and where it curves round, those bits will be added in a second. So once you've got that other sort of not quite so triangular shape, we can fill that in. But yeah, if your background is still wet, you might find that it's slightly changing the colour of the petals. So do just take a bit of time to dry your canvases. And then hopefully you'll be able to get a nice even layer of red on that. So it's a really good idea to keep rinsing off your brush just to make sure it's going to be nice and smooth when it goes on the canvas. You don't want it to get too clogged up with paint. So I'm going to do the next one. And we're actually going to do, I know I said we're going to work around the poppy, but I think it'll be easier if we do this one going up to 2 o'clock next, just to make it a little bit easier to get this last one in, because it's a slightly different shape, that last one. So this one is going to be very similar shape to our first petal we've done. So same kind of thing again. I'm going to be going out to the top right corner, roughly to about 2 o'clock. Try and keep it roughly the same kind of length as the first one. But I'm just going to make this a little bit wider. So I'm going to go up like this. It's going to slightly overlap that first one we've done. I'm going to pull the brush round. Kind of looks like a clover at the second. That's the sort of thing we want to go for, that sort of shape for the petals. Then we're going to make it a little bit more realistic in just a moment. So then fill it in when you've done that the third one. Can't count today apparently. And I'm hoping that you guys are all okay. If there's any bits you want me to go back over so far, let me know before we do this last petal. Because then once we've done the last petal, we're going to go in with our highlights, and then we'll do our shadows, and then we'll do another layer of red over the top. And then we're going to do our stem and the leaves to finish off. So let me know how you're getting on. I hope you're all good. Hopefully you've got lots of pictures so far. I'm very excited to see your paintings. So I do have a little message from the Royal British Legion to say a big, big thank you to all of you guys. So they just wanted to remind you guys that you can still, you can get poppies from all of your supermarkets, post offices, lots of charity shops sell them as well. So anything that you can do to support the whole appeal would be fantastic if you could do that as well. But it means so much that you guys have taken time out of your lovely Sunday to paint with us. It's a really nice way to raise money and try something new, so it does mean a lot, so thank you so much. But yeah, I hope you're all good. So anyone needs to send a photo, let me know. I'm just going to double check our Facebook just to make sure I've got all those pictures. Krista, did you send a picture in the end? I'm going to have a quick look. Hopefully we've got something that looks a little bit poppy-like at the second, or clover-like, anything. Oh, I've got a message. Ah, looks like you're having fun, Natalie. Fantastic. Oh, Krista, which one did you send it to? We've not seen that one. It might be on. Did you send it to Brush Party Live, maybe? Because I've not seen yours yet. Oh, I've seen it now. Oh, fantastic. I love the colour on that one, Krista. That's so lovely. So we've got a slightly different background going on. Nice different colours. Very, very good. So yeah, if you want to change anything about this painting, just go for it. The more creative you get, the better. Just have fun with it. So the last one we're going to do is a slightly different shape. So I'm just going to do it nice and slowly with a brush. And yeah, same red again. So a little bit of red on the brush. Oh yes, thank you, Brush Party. Don't forget to use the hashtag when you're, if you want to upload photos and things on Facebook or Instagram on your stories, don't forget to tag the hashtag and things. So the last one is going to overlap our third petal slightly. So what we're going to do is we're going to add like a tick line. So if you think of like the Nike tick. Oh, good. That's so nice to hear. Hi, guys. So yeah, we're going to add kind of like the Nike curve tick. So I'm going to start from the centre of the poppy. So just, we're not going over that red bit, but just sort of nearby. And I'm going to pull the brush down in this gap that we've got over here. And I'm going to twist the brush up. And this bit is this line in here. So it's the right-hand side of this petal. That curve in there. And to finish off that side, I'm going to now have the long bristles pointing up to the top right corner where we've just finished our line. And I'm going to add a little line going all the way down. Not sure if you can see that okay. I'll bring it a bit closer. It might get a little bit lost because it's all red, but we can redefine that line later on with our highlights and shadows. I think so. That's one half of that petal. And the other half is going to be a slightly smaller little curved line in there just to finish off that side. So it's a nice rounded shape on the left, kind of like a like an L shape, and then up the top right. So it's starting to look a bit more poppy-like now. So we'll actually get the shape now. So we're going to get a few more details in while we've got the red and before we've got the highlights. So I'm just going to use the same brush, and this bit can be a nice, like the messier this bit is, the better, really. Oh, Donna, did I group? Oh, fantastic. So the middle of this first poppy, I'm going to have the long bristles pointing up to the top left corner. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slight bump like this, like a little ridge just on the top there. And I'm going to do the same thing lots of times like this, just to give it a nice shape. And then what we can do is also pull out the sides a little bit and just add lots of extra wavy bits to our poppy. And it just makes it a little bit more realistic, adds a bit more detail in. Okay. And it will be a lot clearer. When we start adding those highlights and shadows in, it's going to make it look really, really lovely. And you can make them really small. You can make these bumps quite big. It's totally up to you what you do. Get a bit more rounded in there. You just don't want it to be too even. That's one of the main things. You don't want it to be too symmetrical. I'm going to do another little one here. And then finish that off like that. So we can do that same kind of technique on all of them. So for this second one, I'm going to add slightly rounded shape in here, just on the left-hand side. So I've got a nice little bump on there. And then we can add lots of those wiggly lines and things at the bottom of this one. So it's just making it a little bit, just a little bit more detailed. And we could also add this bit of the poppy's petal where it kind of curves behind itself. So for that bit, you just want to literally add an extra flick on the side. Doesn't it? It makes such a big difference, Helen. It's the little things. It definitely is the little things that make such a big change. And when we add the highlights on, just prepare yourselves. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun, this one. I hope you're enjoying it. I find it really therapeutic, this one, really relaxing to do. So yeah, this one is kind of like a little, just a little backwards C sort of shape. So it needs to be thinner at the point and then bigger at the side. So it looks like that petal is folding round into a nice point. There we go. And then again, same thing on this one. So you can add like separate those two halves a little bit more. So you've got a little bit of a bump in the middle, or either side, should I say. And then the last one, same thing again, just a little bit more detail in there. But don't forget that this one on the right-hand side is behind the one on the left. So make sure you don't lose that line in there. But it will become clearer when we start adding those other highlights and shadows in a second. Oh, it's got a nice little flick on the end as well. So I'm going to add another little flick in there just to make it end on a nice point. There we go. And the good thing is, like I said before with acrylics, is that even if you feel like, actually, I might want to add a bit more to that, you absolutely can do. There's no right or wrong. So I actually think I might make this one a little bit more rounded at the top. And you can just paint over it as many times as you feel like you need to. So that is a really good thing about acrylics. With watercolours, though, it's a little bit less forgiving. So once you've kind of got those paint marks on there, it's kind of stuck. But another thing with watercolour, though, it's slightly different to acrylics, that you can layer it up and you actually see all the layers. So that might be quite nice to do as well, like different colours and things. So yeah, right. So make sure that all of your petals have a couple of little extra bumps and things on the side just to make it look a bit more realistic. And then we're going to add our highlights next. So give your brush another really good rinse off in the water, just to get all of that red out. Now you could just leave that as it is, because actually it's quite a nice, bold kind of picture at the second. So it's completely down to you what you kind of do with this. You know what would look really nice, actually? If I had glitter, I would definitely be adding a little bit of glitter to this. So at the end, for those of you that are painting with young ones, it might be quite nice to add a bit of glitter on top. I used to get very excited about glitter when I was younger. So the next little step is adding those highlights. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a nice clean brush. I'm going to stick with the same brush that we've just used for those petals. And I'm going to use some neat white first. Now it looks really bold and really kind of like, before we add the red back over the top. So don't worry, just keep going with this bit. It all kind of pulls itself together in a second. So I'm going to add some white to paintbrush. And actually my water is a little bit murky because I've used so much red. So when it's on the palette, it's going to look a little bit pink just from the water. But when it goes on the painting, it is going to stand out as a white colour. So don't panic if it's got a bit pink. That's absolutely fine. So I'm just getting nice equal amounts of white on both sides of the brush. It's not completely filled up too much. It's a nice even layer. And then what we can do is just scrape the brush on the side of the palette or the plate, whatever you're using, just to make sure there's not too much on there. And you get some nice slip lines. So these highlights can can pretty much go anywhere, but I would maybe use it to define some of your bumps to make it look like they're ridges on the petal. So if we go back to the first one we've done, I've got a nice little bump in here. So I'm going to use this one as a little marker for my highlight. So I've got a little dot in there, and I'm going to extend this line all the way down to the center. So when you're doing your brush stroke, if you're doing this with pencils, I would, if you've got a white, definitely try and use a white, because it will just add a nice little highlight still. So I told you it's going to be really bright for a second, but it does all come together. So yeah, I'm just going to add a little highlight on that bump there. And as you're doing your brush stroke, you're pulling away from the canvas really slowly. And this also really helps to give like a bit more shape to the petal. So it kind of looks like if it's got a bit of a bend to it, it makes it look like the petal's kind of curving round. And I'm going to do this on almost all of those bumps. So really thin lines if you can. You can maybe do a couple of thicker ones to add a slightly bigger highlight. So I might turn the brush a little bit more widthway. So I'm using a few more of those bristles to get a highlight in there. Then maybe a couple of smaller ones next to it. You can even do a couple of little dashes kind of throughout the petal without it being completely on the end. Kind of looks like we're maybe ruining it a little bit, but I promise it's all going to work. So yeah, I'm just doing a couple of slightly smaller ones now on that side. And we're doing the same thing on all of the petals. So I think especially on this one on the left-hand side, this is quite a good place now to add like another layer to it. So I'm kind of separating that little extra bit on the left. So I'm doing a little line from that bump on the left and in. So we're just adding big highlights or thin highlights, a bit of both, to our petal. But there's no like set place for these to go. So there's no right or wrong still, because we're going to be adding red over the top. So it actually really does not matter where these go. It just adds a little bit extra. So I'm just going to add a little bit of a white line on this curve, the right-hand side of the second petal, to go down like this. So that's going to look like there's a bit of light hitting that little part. Okay, so the white is also going to look really good to make this petal stand out. Because it's red on red at the second, you can't really see the top of this one. So it's a really good place to get that line back in. Let me know if you've got any questions about these highlights. So I've not been that clear, because there's not really, like I said, there's not really any set place for these to go. And we have got the shadows to add in as well. So nothing's really going to stand out that much at this point. Well, when we add the rest of the colours on, we'll all blend in. So I was doing a couple of last flicks on this one on the right. Not too many though, because this one's kind of behind that second one. And I'll bring mine a little bit closer so you can see what we've got so far. I'll do one last little highlight in here to make that stand out. Okay. We definitely need to let this dry. So actually I might change the order slightly. So we definitely want to make sure that our petals are dry. So what we could do now is add all the green stem and the leaves, and then we can go back and really get those last minute details on the poppy sorted. So give your brushes a really good rinse off in the water. And for this bit, you might want to use a smaller brush. Depends how you're getting on with your cropped one, if you've got that brush. So it's up to you which one you use. We're going to be doing a nice thin line. So see how you get on with either of those brushes. Try a bit of both. See which one you prefer. And I'm going to mix the same kind of colour as the background, but this time I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So I'm also going to add a tiny bit of black into the green. So I'm going to use yellow. I'm just going to mix it on top of my background colour, just because I've got a bit of green already there. So I'm doing yellow and blue. And then into that, I'm also going to add some red as well. Sorry, not red, black. Don't add red into it. Oh, okay. So you can send a picture. You can either post it on Facebook. So you can go onto the Brush Party UK page on Facebook, and you can click at the top of the page. It should be publish post or write post, and you'll be able to comment in there. Or you can use the community tag as well, like on the. I think it's just underneath the cover photo. There's a little button that says community, and you can pop a picture in there. Or you can send it via Facebook Messenger as well. Either of those, and I'll be able to get them to my phone. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing these. So yeah, don't add red into that darker colour. I'm totally just lied to you. So we're doing yellow, blue, and black. Or if you're using just green, then you can use green and then just add a little bit of black into it as well. Either or either. So it's a nice dark green because we want to make it stand out against our backgrounds. So I've got it a couple of shades darker. The best way to kind of test it is just to hold your brush near to the canvas and just see what it looks like. If it looks darker, then that's fine. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. Oh, we've got another picture coming through. Oh, that looks fantastic, Becky. Very nice. Lovely shapes as well. Fab. So you can comment on one of the posts as well if you want to upload photos that way. There's all different ways, or you can send us an email as well, which is at info@brushparty.co.uk. So either of those will be fine. So yeah, I'm just adding a bit of water to my paint just to make it a little bit more fluid, because that's going to make it nice and easy to get those lines really crisp. So I'm going to have my long bristles pointing up if we're using the cropped brush, and I will show you with a slightly smaller one as well, just to see, to make sure I'm covering every sort of aspect here. And I'm going to make the poppy stem slightly curved. So what we kind of need to do is hover our brush away from the painting slightly and start in the centre of our black rugby ball that we added in. And I'm going to pull it down, so I'm not touching the canvas just yet. I'm going to imagine that the stem is coming from that point all the way down, and it's going to peek out from the bottom of that petal. So I'm going to do a little dot. So I'm happy with where it's going to start. And then from here, I'm just going to go down to the bottom of the canvas with a slight bend in the stem. We can make it a little bit thicker if we want to. Might add a little bit of a highlight later as well. So I'm going to do another little brush stroke right next to it to make it slightly bigger. There we go. So if you're using a smaller brush, if you're using something a little bit like this one, then the technique's probably a little bit easier. You just need to have the handle kind of pointing down slightly so that you get a nice flow with the brush and the paint. So it's going to just pull down like this. I've got a nice big thick stem in there, haven't I? That's fine. Okay, so from here we can add the first leaf. So we're basically adding in another stem. So I'm going to start from the stem that we've just added, and we're going to add a curved line that's going to go out like this, over to the right, and then it's going to have a little flick on the end. And then we can add the leaf shape around it. So I'm going to start roughly about 1/4 of the way up the stem. So I'm going to start from the bottom this time. And you can use either brush for this bit. So I'm going along my petal like we've just done before. So going along that 1/4 of the way up, I'm going to make a slight V shape. So I've got that little start of the leaf in there. And then I'm going to keep going, pulling it round to the right, and then adding a little flick up like that as well. There we go. So that is the centre of our leaf. And then to get the nice poppy kind of leaf shape, what we can do is add those little bumps that we did on our petals, but do it on the leaves and make them a little bit more pointy. So on the top of the leaf, I'm going to go like this, adding little flicks that go up and then down to join in. But just start small to begin with, just to make sure you've definitely got the shape and everything there. And then you can always add some more in afterwards. So I might add another little flick in there. And then we can do the same thing on the other side. But again, try not to make it too symmetrical. So I might start a little bit lower so it's not in line with that first little pointy bit in there. I'm going to do another little bit there. The main thing is that it needs to get smaller and thinner where it joins the petal, not the petal, the stem. So just keep that bottom bit nice and thin. Okay. So yeah, take a little step back. It really does help taking a step back from your paintings every now and then, just to make sure it's all kind of on track and you're happy with it. And also take a picture as well. That really does help. Even if it's just for you to kind of see it from a slightly different angle as well, that taking a picture really, really helps. I'm making mine a little bit bigger just on the top bit. And then we're going to add that other leaf to make it a nice remembrance poppy. So it's the same thing again, although this time we're not going to see the bottom of the leaf. We're just going to see this top bit poking out from the top left poppy petal. So this needs to go up towards 11 o'clock. So imagine you've got a big clock face, a number of 11s up here. So I'm going to go almost to the corner, but not quite. So I'm just going a little bit lower. And I'm going to start from the end of the leaf and pull the line in and stop just as we get to that edge of the petal there. I'm going to pull it in and then stop. So try not to go over the red line, but don't worry. Oh, I've just got another little message from Donna. Let's have a little look. I know the highlights are a little bit odd, but it completely comes together. Donna, that's absolutely perfect. That's going to look very, very nice. We put the red over the top. Very nice. And we've also got the shadows as well. So it sounds like we've got loads to do, but there's not much left. Very small, simple steps all come together at the last minute. So this one, same kind of texture and process as the first one, except we're just going to make it a little bit wider. I might just do one at a time. So one little bump, fill it in, and then go on to the next one. Fill it in, just so we're not going too far over or anything. Just do it a little bit at a time. And then, depending on how big your petals are, you might find that you've got a little gap where you might end up seeing some of the leaf. So everyone's is going to be a little bit different. Everyone's got different kind of interpretations of measurements and everything. So I think that mine, if I make that a little bit wider down here, you might end up seeing a little bit of the leaf just in this gap in there. Otherwise it kind of looks like the leaf's been cut to kind of fit behind the petal. So I'm just going to add another little green dash, really lightly trying to fill in that little corner in here. Again, don't worry if you end up going over those red lines, because like I said, we've got another 2 layers to add on that. So it's going to be covered up if it goes wrong. So it's all good. Got another couple of bumps on that side. There we go. So if you want to add another little stem in, you can add a little stem just poking out. And I think it kind of just joins it all together a little bit. So I'm just going to do a very small little dash in there, just to give it a little bit of a, it grounds it slightly, so it doesn't look like it's just floating in the background. There we go. Okay, right. Are we ready to add some highlights to our leaves before we do those last 2 bits on the flower? So the highlights on the leaves are nice and easy. We've kind of already done the sort of brush stroke already. So what we're going to do is add a big blob of yellow into the whatever green we were just using, and a big blob of white as well. So we end up with a really nice light green again. So kind of like the colour in the background, but a bit more yellowy. Just makes it a slightly different shade. So I'm adding loads of yellow into the same green we've just used, and a bit of white as well. And give it a bit of love and water, make it a bit more runny. How's everyone getting on? Everyone a little bit quiet? Are you all okay? I'm hoping that you're all fabulous. So I'm adding lots of white, lots of yellow. Okay, so lots of water in that. I'm going to roll the brush around. So for this bit, you can use a small brush, you can use a cropped one, either or either, it's going to be absolutely fine. If you're using the rounded brush, oh No. Okay, let me know what's not going so well. I know the highlights are a little bit odd, but it's all good. It does come together. And Barbara, don't panic. You can pause the video if you need to, but there's no rush. I'm just going to do a little bit of a highlight on the leaf, and then we'll do the last couple of bits. It's all good. So the highlights then are just going to run down the left-hand side of the stem. So I'm just going to do a little dash all the way down the left-hand side. So it's still in the stem, but it's just on the left side of it. So the left half. And if the paint's still wet, that's kind of a bonus because it kind of blends it while you're doing the brush stroke. And it's really, really subtle, but it makes a nice difference. Oh, okay, so the leaf. What about the leaf? So just do a little, if anything, might be worth just doing a generic leaf shape. So just like a rounded shape all the way along. And then once you've got that in, you've got the basic shape, like just a very generic shape, then you can add the points in afterwards. So even if you've done the points already, feel free to go back over it, just smooth it out. It might make it a little bit bigger, but that's fine. You can have a nice big leaf, it's all good. And then add the points afterwards. Totally up to you. So once we've done the highlight on the left, we can then do a highlight going through the center of the leaf. So I'm going to go back down to the bottom. I'm going to go run this all the way through the leaf, up to the top there. And then we can also add a couple of little veins going towards the edges. But I wouldn't overwork this bit too much. Just a couple of little dashes, nothing too major. Most of the focus is on that lovely poppy, so don't worry about adding too much detail to these leaves. I'm just doing a couple of little dashes just to give it a little bit of something. Okay, so are we ready to go over those petals? This is very exciting. So we're going to do a nice kind of, it's like a red wine kind of colour over the top. So just make sure that your white is definitely dry. And if it's not, just add, maybe just tap your tissue on slightly if it's really, really thick, and then give it a little blast with the hairdryer, or just give your canvas another waft to get those last bits nice and dry. So we're going to make, like I said, a nice red wine kind of colour. So into our red, we're going to mix a very small amount of black. Now, not too much, because we've still got our shadows to add in afterwards. So, yeah, give it a good rinse, give it a good waft, and then we're going to mix up that colour. Okay, mine's pretty much dry. It's just that one bit, there was loads and loads of paint in it. So I'm just taking a little bit off with my finger. The rest looks okay. Right, so we're going to make it look a little bit less cartoony now, a little bit more realistic. Give it that really nice, it looks almost like velvet kind of red, doesn't it? So I'm going to use whatever brush you use for the petal. So I'm going back to my cropped brush. Now, if you're using pencils, I would just maybe do a bit of red and then maybe do a tiny little bit of black over the top, and same with crayons. And then you can always use your finger to blend it. That's a really good way to get the colours to mix if you're using pencils, crayons. Felt tips might be a little bit different. We might not need to go back over it, maybe just do a little bit of red without the black. So what I'm doing is I'm picking up a little bit of black, not so much at all. I've actually picked up loads, I didn't mean to. Just a little bit of black. And then we're going to mix it with some of that red. And we don't want it to go too dark just yet. It's just to make it a slightly richer kind of colour. So it's not brown. So if it does go too dark, just add another bit of red over the top. It just makes it a really nice warm colour. So that might be a little bit dark. So I'm going to add loads more red back in. There we go. So that's probably the colour we want to go for. So it's not too dark, not too light, but it's just slightly different to what we had before. Okay. So I'm going to take quite a bit of paint off. So I don't want loads of paint on there. And make sure you've not got any neat black on the brush before we do this bit, because that could be a little bit tricky. So give your brush a really good rinse off again. Make sure there's no neat black in there. Then pick up a little bit of paint. Right, so we're pretty much just going to paint over all of the petals again. So I'm going to go from the top, I'm going to paint over it. And hopefully those white lines are still going to be there. Okay. You could always add some more highlights afterwards if you want to, but you don't have to. And we're going to add some shadows in just a second. So if you feel like it's standing out too much, you could always add a little bit more paint over the top. So I think I might need a little bit more paint just on that top bit there. It's a little bit smoother. Okay. And then yeah, just over every single petal where we've got all of those white lines. So yeah, if you, like I said, if you still think it's a bit showing up too much, or you feel like you need to add more, you could just do like another layer of white, doing like a couple more smaller lines and things, and then go back over it with red. The thing with acrylics, as I said at the beginning, is that you can just overlap them as many times as you feel like you need to, and it will just keep covering really nicely, and it will bring it all together. And we've got two last little bits. I was going to say one last little bit. We've actually got two little bits left. So we're going to add the shadows in once this is all painted in. Oh, good to hear, Neil. Fantastic. Like the next little step is the shadows, and it makes a really big difference. It's like the final part to the poppy, and it's this really nice, it kind of is like a brown colour, and it just makes it really, really 3D. It balances out those highlights. So you just got to keep going with this. It's going to be absolutely amazing in a second, I promise. So yeah, we've got the shadows to add in, and then we're going to add a couple of these little dots and things in the centre of our poppies. But I'm glad to hear it's going well. That makes me very happy. Okay, so I might do a little bit more on that bright one there. So this is now a really good time to take another step back, take a little photo. It just makes it a slightly more realistic colour. And then we're going to add a little bit more black into the red that we've just been using. So I'm just making it a little bit darker, so it goes a bit more of a brown colour. Again, not too dark, but just a little bit. Exactly, yeah. So if you do put them up in your windows, take a photo. We'd absolutely love to see them in your window, and definitely post them on Facebook and social media, because it will just, that's a really good way of raising awareness, isn't it? Like social media is great for that sort of stuff, and share the posts and everything if you can, as much as you can, and definitely use those hashtags that we've got in those comments there. So paint poppy and poppy appeal. Okay, so with these shadows, this is where it gets a little bit more technical. So I'm going to start with this big one at the top, because that's the first one we started with. So I'm going to use my brush with the long bristles pointing into the centre of the poppy. And what I'm going to do is just add a couple of dashes like this that go up, really small and thin with the lines. And what you want to do is kind of make it more of a flick. So as you're doing your brush stroke, you want to pull it away from the canvas nice and quickly, and you get a really nice shadow. And it's kind of like the same thing as what we did with the highlights, but a little bit less neat, a little bit messier. And I would only do these mostly in the centre, so down here, towards that darker part, so it makes it really stand out, gives it a nice 3D effect. So some bits you could bring the lines a little bit higher and do a couple of dashes that kind of go a little bit further up into the poppy. But you definitely don't want to overdo it. And if you do feel like you've done a bit too much, like I said, the best thing to do is just to go back and paint over it. So I think I've gone quite far up in that centre point. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of red. We've got a little bit of red, it just blends it out. That's all about the layers. So I'm just using the red going back over the top until it's all blended out. And then for the next petal, I'm going to split it a little bit to make sure that this bit in here on the left, where I've got that nice big bump, looks like it's sitting underneath our first petal. So this shadow in here. So I'm going to go along this edge. And then I'm going to stop where I've got that nice big highlight. I'm going to stop just before it. And what that does, it just pushes it a bit more into the background. And then the same thing on the right-hand side. Oh, hi, Ronnie. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I cannot wait to see your picture. So please do, if you're taking lots of pictures of your painting. That would be so lovely to see. But thank you for joining, Ronnie. That's fantastic that you're supporting such a great cause. So yeah, I'm making that shadow a little bit darker underneath that petal as well. So where you've got those petals overlapping, it's really nice to just add a bit more of a shadow. And maybe a little bit on the little curve that we've got going underneath. And there, can you see that's made such a big difference just underneath that little bump in there? It just makes it looks like it's curving round underneath, and you can maybe do a couple of dark bits flicking out from the middle like we did on that first one. And then on this second, sorry, I keep saying that, on the third one, we can do a couple of shadows just on this second half. So on the right-hand side, just a couple of little flicks going up. You see how it's like brought that forward a little bit. And then on the last one, we can just do a couple of tiny little shadow bits just to set it a bit further back. So it would have quite a lot of shadow in here. It's a really good way to definitely emphasize the top of this petal. So adding a little bit of shadow in there. Hopefully they're looking really fantastic. This is very, very exciting. We are so nearly there. So yeah, feel free to go back in with like the lighter colour and then go back over with red. You could add so many more layers to this painting. There's so much room for putting your own little spin on it. So the last little step then is to rinse off your brush. Give it a really good rinse in the water. And we're going to go back to the black. So for this bit, you could use your really small pointy brush. Actually, if you do have a small brush, it might be worth using it for this last little step. So small brush, or you could use the long part of your cropped brush. So it depends what sort of brushes you have. So you just want a small point so that you can get these nice small black dots in there. So I'm going to go back to the neat black. You don't need as much water on the brush at all as before, so it's quite thick with paint. And we're going to go back over the centre of our poppy. So I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger. I feel like it's got a bit too small in the centre there. I'm going to do lots of little dots, making it a little bit more messy in the centre. So it's not got a solid line. Just be careful though, where you've got that petal going over the top, that needs to be quite smooth because you don't want to paint over that petal. And then it's the top bit. And you can also do a couple of little dots along the top, a little bit further up. Then we can add a couple of dashes that kind of join. Oh, funny. Oh, hi, Becky. What a coincidence. That is quite funny. So once we've done the second layer of dots, we can join them together with a couple of dashes. Like this, and it just gives it that nice finishing touch. We can also add a little bit of white for the very, very last step. Just give your brush a tiny rinse off in the water. A little bit of neat white on the brush, and this is just to finish off the centre, just as a lovely highlight. So a tiny patch of white dots just in your centre. And that is pretty much everything you need to know for this lovely, lovely, amazing poppy appeal painting. So I really hope that you've enjoyed painting with me today. It's been so lovely. Thank you for keeping me company on that live chat. It's been great. So don't forget to share your paintings with us. Don't forget to use those hashtags. We've got Poppy Appeal and Painter Poppy. And don't forget to donate if you haven't done so already. It does mean a lot to us. So yeah, thank you so, so much. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit longer. So if you've got any questions, let me know. but I'm going to be looking at the Facebook page as well because I'm so excited to see them on there. So like I said, you can either post your pictures up on your own wall, which is quite great because it goes out to all of your friends as well. And you can tag Brush Party, you can at us using the little, you can at us, see? You can tag Brush Party UK, use the hashtag for both of the Poppy Appeal things as well. And yeah, tell your friends about it, it'd be great. And then send us photos of them in your wall at home and in your windows. And yeah, fantastic. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your Sunday and a great rest of your weekend. I'm going to leave it for a few more minutes. So if you do have any questions about the painting still, let me know. So if you've got any glitter, now would be a good time to add some glitter. Like I think the center point in here would look absolutely amazing with some glitter. Or, think about it, you could like go around on your highlight lines if you can still see them. Maybe add a couple of little glittery bits in there or on your leaves. So you could also add some like shadows in your leaves and highlights and things. So there's so much more you could do with this. But I'm going to finish it there, guys. Thank you so much again. It's been amazing. So yeah, I'll see you all again very soon. See you later.